How's it going, everyone? I'm Bert.
And I'm Fonx.
And this is
Bert and Fonx.
So, language is important.
Do you speak it?
Why? So the other day, Bert and I were talking, and I said something that sounded really weird, and Bert he corrected me. He was really nice about it, but he was also like, "Hey, you've been speaking English like a lot longer than I've been alive," which is true.
True, yeah.
And what he did not mention, see, I say weird shit. What he didn't mention is I've been almost 30 years your senior.
Almost, yeah.
And I've been speaking English since 1969, which is literally 50 years ago.
Yeah.
I've been speaking English 50 years, and it still sounds weird as fuck. So we were asking ourselves, what is it? Why a person like me, I'm very well read as, in English, so I can actually write pretty
absolutely.
good English. It's pretty good. I'm pretty proud of my English, but it does sound weird. Why is that? And the answer that I could come up with when I dwelled on it a little bit was, as you know, I speak Spanish and English. I used to speak German when I was a child, and I forgot. If we have time, we can talk about that later.
Well, as in you forgot how to speak German?
Yeah.
Okay. And
I have really interesting anecdotes about that. So let's try to remember, because it's really interesting how your brain records.
Right.
So what we realized is that there are a bunch of words that are spelled exactly the same in English and Spanish, and they sound absolutely completely different. So the mix-up is always there.
Right.
You always have a part of your subconscious brain, the one that practices language all the time, never gets it right, because it's always doing all these fast decisions between, like, am I switching to this language or this language?
Right.
Which really,
so no matter which side you're coming from, it's always going to screw you up a little bit.
Exactly, because it's not really, your brain isn't thinking language, your brain is thinking sound.
Right, exactly.
So the phonemes, and I don't even know how you pronounce that in English, but it's appearing written down on the screen. But the phonemes, the sounds of the language, is what your brain gets mixed up with. So, so there's a ton of words that are spelled exactly the same. In fact, my daughter, who, as you know, is fully bilingual. My daughter is,
yes.
I have a daughter with a person from the States. We're no longer together. She lives in a completely different state, and we shared custody. And so we would share, she would travel from one house to the other. And I've been taking her to Spain twice a year for as long as I've had her under my custody. Now she has a job and she goes to college. She doesn't have as much time to travel to Spain, unfortunately. But the good news is she has a really full relationship with her cousins and her grandmother and her uncles and aunts in Spain.
All the family that's over there, yeah.
Right. And she is bilingual, and she does say weird things in Spanish because she's more used to speaking English. So her brain gets the sounds weird. So we used to play this game in the car about guessing words that are spelled exactly the same in English as in Spanish. And we used to play this game a lot, and we could play it right now, in fact.
Heck yeah. I love games. Hit me.
Oh, that's right. So, well, can you guess a word in Spanish that is not?
A word that would be the same in Spanish as it is in English, or at least the spelling.
Yes, the spelling.
The easiest one for me to think of is probably television.
Yeah.
Or televisión.
Yeah, you actually nailed it.
Yeah.
You actually nailed it. So televisión is television, which in English sometimes it's even television. You don't even do the tele.
Depending on who you're talking to, yeah.
Well, yeah. And so it's not that different, though. I remember, but it is pretty different. I remember one day actually you brought one up, and it was really interesting. It was just hospital.
Oh, that's right.
You remember that one?
Yeah.
That one sounds so different in Spanish. So different. So what would be your guess?
This is trying to see if I remember Spanish class. All right, so hospital is English, and it's spelled the same. It would be hospital.
Almost.
Hospital.
No, very close. But you know where your mistake was?
What?
So the H is hardly ever pronounced in Spain.
Oh, okay.
It's called an aspirated H. I don't know if that's English even. So aspirate. Do you guys have aspirate as in with a vacuum cleaner when you suck something out?
Yeah.
You breathe it in instead of breathing it out. That's what it really means. So if you aspirate the H, you don't pronounce it. And you have one in English like that, which is honor.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you don't say honor, and you don't say honorable. You say honorable and honor. Every H in Spanish works that way.
So it's hospital?
Hospital.
Hospital.
Yeah, you had it right. The first time, everything was perfect.
Except for the H. Okay.
So you open that A at the end of hospital.
Yeah.
So the one thing in Spanish, too, is that the vowels all have the same sound. In English, they don't.
Right.
Because English has a borrowed alphabet. I got this so I put this on the blog that I used to have.
Okay.
Making fun of how there's a demonstration, and we'll put a link. There's this old guy that was really funny. He would make a demonstration of how English doesn't make sense. So he would demonstrate like, tomb has OMB, but comb also has OMB, and it doesn't rhyme with tomb. And he just kept changing words that don't rhyme. And the reason for that is this Venezuelan guy answered my blog saying, the reason is the alphabet of Latin was created for Latin sounds, not for Germanic sounds, and English borrowed that alphabet. So there's no real correlation.
Right.
So A can sound A, depending on what word you're saying in English. In Spanish, it's always A. Always. And every single vowel is exactly the same. So let's do some more words.
Yeah, let's do some more words, because I think that was really interesting.
So can you guess more?
Off the top of my head, I can't really guess anymore.
So if you have television, so those are all words from Latin, right? So there's other words that start with tele in English. Half of those probably are spelled the same way. Do you want to guess a couple?
Tele. Well, I know of one, but I don't think it's spelled the same, which would be telephone.
You're right. It's not. You're absolutely right. It's not. So let's go.
I can't really think of any more tele ones that would be spelled the same. I just know that it's almost the exact same word. It's just not spelled the same.
It's not exactly the same. Yeah. So, like for instance, I was listening right now. Telegram, but telegram is telegramma. It has another A at the end.
Or telephone is telefono.
Right.
In Spanish.
Right. So here's one. Video.
Video is the same?
Yeah. Exactly the same.
Oh crap! How do I say that in Spanish? I'm just going to say it's video.
Yeah, you nailed it. That was really simple.
With a little bit of, just a slight emphasis in the wrong area or the right area, depending on where you go. Okay.
Right. Here's one that's kind of hard. Irrefutable.
There's some rolled R's in that one. Irrefutable. Irrefutable.
Almost.
Something like that.
Irrefutable. But
don't judge me on my Spanish.
Hey, I'll tell you one thing that you can do better than me. I can't roll my fucking R's.
You can't do the
That's why they kicked me out of Spain. I can't roll my R's, and I'm a Spaniard. So, irrefutable.
Irrefutable.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's another one that's kind of similar, and this one you probably nail if you've heard this one, which is irreversible.
Irrefusable?
That's a refutable one. Irreversible. That's how it's spelled. That's kind of where the trick is.
Irreversible.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's irreversible?
Almost. Irreversible.
Sible.
See, you did an A, and it's an I. Irreversible.
Irreversible.
There you go.
Okay.
And that reminds me of a word you actually love, which is irregardless.
Don't confuse people with love when it's hatred.
So here's the thing.
The word that doesn't exist that everyone uses.
Exactly. So we're going to give you guys a front on that. So there's irregardless is a bastardized blending of irrespective of
and regardless.
Regardless. Exactly. They're two completely different terms, which I'm probably going to make appear in my hands in this on the screen. Exactly. So what was it again? Yeah, regardless and irrespective. You can say irrespective of your choice, I'm just going to do this, or regardless of what choice you make, I will be doing this. Irregardless does not exist. It's not English.
It's not anything.
There's a ton of people we actually know that use it, and some of you know who you are. So we're not
shame. Yeah. I know your name.
We're not going to insist on this here sheet.
Also, if you get the reference that I just did, kudos to you and let me know down below.
I don't know what the title of that.
You're already one up on fonts if you know that reference, but it's okay.
Yeah, I don't know what you're gonna have to tell me.
Okay.
So, let's do some more. How about we did irreversible, right?
Yeah, we did irreversible.
Oh, here's a couple of funny ones with the I. How about impossible?
Oh Oh, man. Because I know the I is an E sound.
You can do it, dude. Like, you know a lot more. You're just getting blind because we're doing it now. But
Yeah, well, now it's like, now it's on the spot. Yeah. So I'm like,
I know you know a lot more Spanish than that.
Imposible.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Imposible.
Imposible. Exactly. Yeah. I thought of another I, but I can't remember now. So, imposible. Inadmissible. No, inadmissible has two S's in Spanish, only one. So that one doesn't count. Here's another one. Lunar.
Lunar. It'd just be lunar or lunar.
Almost.
Right?
Open the A. Lunar.
Lunar?
Yeah, because you're doing lunar.
Okay.
It's almost an E. So E's in Spanish are E.
Well, that's why I was trying to go er instead of ar. So lunar.
Lunar. Yeah, that's
okay.
Yeah. How about commercial? That was hard.
Commercial would be commercial. No.
Nice. That's right. It sounds exactly the same. No, this one's really hard. Actually, I didn't realize until I said it.
Commercial. Comer.
Yeah.
Ciel. Comercial.
Perfect, actually. I'll tell you why I said it was hard. It's because most Spanish-speaking countries will say it the way you did.
Mm-hmm.
And the center of Spain, the original Spanish, will say comercial.
Ithiel? They put like a TH sound in there?
Yeah. And I'll tell you why. So, this is a great time to talk about the famous lisp thing. I fucking hate that myth. So there are some people those of you that have studied Spanish in the States will probably have heard about a myth of the Spanish king that had a lisp. And that's why the original Castilian accent has a th sound instead of the S sound.
Okay, that would make sense, yeah.
And I'm about to reveal here why that is a load of bullshit. We are many things, but we don't have a lisp. And here's why.
Yeah, do tell.
A lisp is when you can't make a distinction between two different sounds.
Right.
Right? It so happens that Castilian Spanish has the S sound. We pronounce the S. We don't say, when we say serpent or snake, serpiente, we don't say serpiente, we say serpiente. Mm-hmm. All right? But then when we do a C, then we say th. You know?
What? Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, for example, San Francisco, not San Francisco, San Francisco. And here's where you can tell a total snob that doesn't know Spanish, it's starting to sound Spanish, will say San Francisco. Right? But the thing is, San is Stan with an S, and th in Francisco is a th. So the only thing that happens here is that it's a different accent. And so the one that has the S thing got popularized worldwide.
Right.
And
whereas the C one
it just stayed local, and it's kind of like British English versus rest of the world English kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, like aluminium.
Yeah.
Where does the extra letter come from?
Aluminium? Because originally it was there. Somebody took it out. You don't spell it that way.
America.
Right? Yeah. Well, but, doesn't Australia do the same thing though too?
Yeah, I think Australia does.
Because I think the worldwide says Gloucester, and only in England they say Gloucester.
Something like that, yeah.
I'm going to translate for you. Are you looking for Gloucester Road? Gloucester Road. Gloucester Road. He's actually looking for Gloucester Road. Whereabouts is it?
Like Worcestershire sauce. I always read that like a Worcestershire sauce.
Oh, yeah. Well, and then there's other things too where like I'm sure the rest of the world, if they were looking at a map of the U.S., they would look at somewhere like St. Louis, and they would say St. Louis. But if you go to St. Louis, it's St. Louis.
Oh, there you go. And New Orleans.
Nolans.
And New Orleans. So everyone says New Orleans. Except
and then you go there and they're like, no, it's Nolans.
Yeah. I
where it's like, it almost becomes one word at that point.
Right. Yeah. And there's a lot of that stuff happening in history. So case in point, the whole like, when did tomato turn into tomato? Or the other way around. When did tomato go tomato?
Or that's one of my favorite phrases too, where people are like, oh, I don't know if it's this or this. And you just go, tomato, whatever. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Because there's a song about it too. Like, potato. Let's call the whole thing off, you know?
Oh.
Yeah, there's a famous jazz, I think it's a jazz standard.
Tomato, let's call the whole thing off.
That whole thing is like, that speaks to the evolution of language. So language is continually changing. And that's why you can trace things back, but sometimes it doesn't make any sense. For example, the word regula, where regular comes from, is the exact origin of the word rule. It's a Latin word for rule.
Regula?
regula, and the word regular comes from as a rule, you know.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
But-
so if it's something that happens on a regular basis.
Right. Exactly. That's very good. But now here's what's funny. So people will ask themselves, how can rule come from regula? Especially when in Spanish it's regla.
Regla.
Remember, I can't roll my R's.
Regla.
There you go. The U in Spain, the U falls out like boink, you know, from regula, it just drops off and it becomes regla. There's no more U.
Oh, really? Okay.
But in English, the R and the G drop off and you say rula, you know, which if you say quick is rule. You know,
oh, yeah.
Rula, you know, so somebody just started going, over the years, it was regula, you know, and in Spain, it was more like regular. You know what I mean? So
that's really, like, that's something that really fascinates me is, like, how things get shifted and pinched, like, over time in different areas. Like, if it starts here and it splits out, it's almost like the Galapagos Islands with the finches.
Okay.
And they have, like, the different finches that just evolved different ways because they were trapped on these little island ecosystems.
Oh, right.
And each one of them was slightly different, so they evolved a little differently from each other while evolving at the same time. And it's kind of like that.
That's a perfect
with the
example.
language. Yeah.
That's what happens with language. So that's why sometimes you say, oh, that comes from Latin. And somebody else will go like, well, it doesn't sound anything like that.
Right.
But then if you go back to the root, you go like, oh, it just went these...
Makes total sense then.
Because accents are so different. So for another case in point, so like I, how would you spell I in English?
With the letter I.
Oh, well, good. Well, you can also...
you mean like the word I for like your eyeball.
I meant the sound I, but, you know, because you can do the letter I.
Yeah.
You can also do I as in E-Y-E.
Yep.
You can also do A-Y-E. You know?
I suppose, yeah.
Originally,
when I think of that one, I don't think I think I.
Right.
Like, there's a little
but when you say
different.
I, Captain.
Yeah, I guess that's point.
So in the Old English, it was that.
Right.
My point with that is that in Spanish, that is a Y. Okay? As we just saw, in English, there's three spellings that you can make the same sound with. In Spanish, it's either AY or AI you can make that sound with. In French, get this, it's O-U-I-L-L-E.
For I?
Yeah.
I thought that was... How do you spell we?
O-U-I.
So it's just O-U-I.
L-L-E. And now it's I. If you look at a comic when somebody goes, I, when somebody steps on your toe and someone goes, I, it says O-U-I-I-L-I-L-L-E, which any Spaniard would pronounce weird. You know, so it sounds weird. It sounds weird as fuck.
Yeah, because then you get the two O's and it's like tortilla and it's like, yeah.
And if you think about it, all of the French phonetics make no sense. There's always like 18 extra vowels where there should be just one or two.
Right.
And one day I heard this theory, which I thought was fascinating. This guy said that the whole fucked up spelling of French is a code that the scribe guild made up so that they could spot an imposter and an infiltrator. So somebody who hadn't paid their dues in the scribe guild that was actually getting money to translate and write letters. This is in the time where no one could read or write, so a scribe had a job. It was like, I need to send a love letter, or I need to write to my father.
For somebody.
And then you pay a scribe in the street, and they would have their little toolkit with their, you know, and they would just write it for you and put a little seal and charge you. And there was a guild for this. And so if anybody learned how to read or write on their own, they were just rogues and they didn't pay their dues to learn into the scribe guild. They would spell shit the way it sounded instead of with this all convoluted.
Right.
And so they would spot in and outcast him or whatever it is they did to people they felt were imposters. So that's a story I heard.
Man, it's so interesting. So instead of like giving them credit for going off and being able to try and learn something themselves, they just chastise them because they didn't do it the right way.
Yeah, have you observed like the instinct for monopoly that society struggles with constantly? How people try to close a market so that they can only control it.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, I'm definitely familiar with a couple of those that I have to deal with on a fairly regular basis.
Content being one of them, you know.
Yeah, no kidding.
So you got to pay your dues here, or else you get like ostracized. Anyway, that's a different conversation. So yeah, so that's the whole story about phonetic mix-up.
Yeah,
and just comes from that because I'm really proud of my accent. Like somebody that's not from the States will listen to me, will hear me speak English, and they will think he sounds American. Did you know that?
No.
Because here I don't. Here I clearly don't. But if I talk to a British person, they say, like, you sound totally...
Oh, so like anywhere outside of the U.S. They're like, oh, totally.
Correct.
You know, like,
So I was
From the US,
proud of my
not
English.
American.
Right, my English in Spain sounds so cool. And I was super proud of it. And then I come here, and friends and girlfriends would tell me, why don't you have a cool Spanish accent? I'm like, shit, I can't win. And it still sounds weird, you know? So, yeah, so that's my story.
To be fair, I think it sounds awesome.
Thank you.
In my personal opinion.
I think it sounds weird as fuck, but it's a fun one. One of my siblings actually is a professor. She's a communications professor, but she learned. So the reason I speak this English is because I learned in Germany. So my only options were German or English.
Right.
And I only heard Spanish at the end of the day at home. I got home. So I got to pick up on this Germanic accent. I never picked up the Spanish accent. A couple of my siblings learned English in Spain. So they were too young when we were in Germany to go to school.
So do they have more of that like traditional sort of Spanish accent with the English then?
Exactly. So my sister, who lives in the States too, and she is a professor, she speaks better English than I do, but she sounds like Antonio Banderas, you know, because she has the very distinct Spanish sound. And that goes back to the whole thing of how your brain gets sounds mixed up. So if you learn surrounded by a certain sound interpretation, it's a lot harder for you to pick up an accent.
Yeah.
And so if you're a child, and I was a child, I was barely learning Spanish when I started learning English and German. So my brain was wide open and I picked up the accents a lot better. I have a different accent. And every single one of my siblings, there's 5 of us. We all speak several languages.
Right.
When we switch, in Spanish, we all sound from the same part of Spain. When we switch to English or French or German, we will all sound from different parts of the world. So you're speaking to your own sibling and they sound like from Liverpool and I sound like... So, yeah. So we got to talking about this, remember, because we talked about how weird I pronounced astronaut. And I still don't know how to
that's right. That's right. We did.
When we were doing the ancient astronaut thing.
The ancient aliens one, yeah.
I have the feeling that I'm pronouncing it wrong now.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily wrong. It's just, I've usually always heard it as astronaut.
Oh, come on, Robert. You know I'm doing it wrong then.
Well, it's not. It doesn't mean it's wrong.
Well, it's not the way.
So it sounds like the way that you're pronouncing it with astronaut, it sounds like AU. So it's like Austria. As opposed to astronaut, which is just the AST.
Right.
So it'd be like if I had to think of 2 words that could help like think of it, would be like Austria for astronaut or Gaster for astronaut.
Got it. Yeah, I was saying ass as in ass.
Or that, so yeah.
Astronut, you know, like that's what I was thinking. So I was thinking, it can't be like this. But, you know, again, like I used to say Pegasus, I used to pronounce it Pegasus. And people would just laugh, and I wouldn't understand why. Pegasus, yeah. And then I finally somebody drew a pig and some asses, and I was like, oh, that's what they're hearing.
Would that be the famous artist Pablo Pegasus?
Pablo Pegasus.
Pablo Picasso was never called an asshole.
I'm actually really glad that you brought up the astronaut thing from when we were talking about the ancient aliens, because like there was something we had sort of talked about there with like the origin of astro and not, and like how that kind of came around.
So remember that was astronaut means the navigator of the stars.
Right.
Where astro comes from aster, which means star, literally.
Yeah.
And I believe it's Latin, maybe Latin from Greek, but definitely Latin. I think, yeah. So, and then astronomer, astrologist, that's all star related.
Right.
And not, remember the U and the V are the same in Latin still. Comes navigator.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah. Okay.
The Nautilus. You remember that?
Yes.
So an astronaut is a navigator.
Very famous ship.
Right, yeah. From Jules Verne, right?
Yeah.
We have to talk about it that one day.
Yeah, for sure.
So the navigator of the stars. So that's the whole thing that we talked about. And I remember I said we should do this in another episode.
Right. So if that's astronaut, what about cosmonaut? Because I know that's what the Russians use like to call their space explorers. They're calling them cosmonauts. What does cosmo mean in that sense then?
The cosmos is the universe.
So those are just universe explorers.
The navigator of the universe, the sailors of the universe.
That's really good. No offense, U.S., but now knowing that, cosmonaut kind of sounds better, just saying.
Astronaut sounds cool, too. Like, the star pilot, the star navigator, it's just...
Starman.
I guess there's so many words in American science fiction that are, Star Wars, Starman...
Yeah.
The starfighters, though. You have the star word so much.
Yeah.
That universe sounds refreshing.
Well, it just sounds... So stars... I guess stars can mean any number of stars, but universe is a word to me that just... It just feels more all-encompassing. You know what I mean?
Well, it feels really wide, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it feels expansive.
But I mean, I feel both words are pretty cool in and of themselves, and they both come from Latin, which is really funny because we have, you know, the Russians back in the Cold War when the space race was going on. And you had the United States and the USSR, you know. And both of them have a Latin-derived word to express the same thing, only, you know, hey, I'm going to call it this, and fuck you, I'm going to call it this other thing.
Right. And the whole reason that we wanted to do sort of this thing today was because of talking about the origins of words and what that's actually called in the study of that, which is etymology.
That's right.
And now, specifically related to etymology, there was something that you did on your blog a while ago, right? And they were called, I believe you called them your Etymology Quickies.
Yeah.
And they were like little infographics with illustrations that you did. That sort of
simplographics.
Simplographics. I like that.
Yeah, they're kind of simpler than your regular infographic, which is more about data.
Right. And these ones definitely break down the words a little bit more. And I wanted to go through some of those today.
Okay.
And I think those would be a really fun thing to kind of talk through. And for any of you that are listening to this and you're not watching this on YouTube, which by the way, it is also available in video form on YouTube. For any of you that are listening to this and would like to follow along with us, we're actually going to put a link down below to where you can get your hands on those images as well. So you can follow along. And then
yeah, because the blog they originated from no longer exists. I took that down a few years ago.
Right.
So, yeah, so we're just going to make them available. We'll put them up on site and we'll put some links. So,
yeah. So, just a disclaimer for anyone out there who is strictly listening to this in podcast form. We are going to be looking at stuff on screen and we will talk a little bit through some of that. But if you want to follow along, click those links. All right, so the first one we're going to go through here is cephalopod, and it's breaking down the word that describes what many of you would know as like octopi or squids or cuttlefish or anything that has like the little tentacles and everything. So it looks like the first point here, the first half of this is sort of an origin from an ancient Greek word of, how do you say this, Fonz? Is it kephale?
So if I were reading in English, I would definitely say kephale, but when I'm speaking Spanish and from having listened to some people that speak Greek, I would say it's kephale or kephalos.
Kephale?
Yeah. Kephale, yeah.
Okay, but the PH is still that F sound?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, so that means head, and then pod, which is just foot. So it's literally head, foot. Because that's all they are.
Right.
So then he goes down and he breaks down each individual piece of this. So if we start at just the cephalopod, or with the cephalo part of it,
it just explains little examples of the same exact root used elsewhere.
Right. So below that are just like little examples to kind of give you a demonstration of other places it could be used. So for cephalo, we have encephalogram, which is literally just a measure of the head. Or for pod, we have tripod, which many of us are familiar with, and we're using a bunch of them in the studio today. But it just means 3-footed or 3 feet. So that's why humans would be bipods or bipedal.
Yep, exactly.
Because we just have the 2 feetsies.
And that's why people that walk on foot are pedestrians.
There you go.
Yep. And that also helps you guess that tripod, that tri is 3, or it's the root of the word 3.
Right.
So there's other things that you can actually make inference off without these
exactly. You get the context clues essentially to sort of build up what other stuff that could be. Oh man, I don't think I've ever heard of this word before. Macrocephalus.
Yep.
Macrocephalus, which just means big-headed. And then the last one here, for pod would be a podiatrist, which is just a foot doctor. So there you go. Now you know. An easy way to remember what kind of a doctor a podiatrist is pod, foot. It's a foot doctor.
Right. And then after those 4 examples, this does a recap. It kind of recaps the first image, but whereas in the first image you were just breaking down the origins, now you're putting it back together, so to speak.
Right. So it's more of a, what is it directly? If you're going to read this, like say you were translating it from Latin to what would be known as English now, it's literally just head with feet. And that's cephalopod, head with feet.
That's actually the name of the species that have the octopi and all. So that's what octopus really. It's a head that has feet.
Now, just to give another little tip of the hat back to the ancient astronauts episode, Have you also heard the theory that cephalopods, because they're so genetically different from anything else we have on the planet, are actually an alien species that crash landed like via an asteroid on Earth millions of years ago and just sort of developed along with us? And so that like octopi and squids and everything are actually remnants of an alien species that crash landed on Earth just because their genetic markers are so very different from everything else on the planet.
Right. No, I haven't heard of that. And we should, if you want, we can make another episode where we talk about the leaps in logic.
I think it's a really interesting
everything
theory.
came out of flying saucer. I think it's damn interesting that there's a species like cephalopods that are so very, very different from all other known species.
Right, exactly.
I think that's fascinating. I also think it's fascinating that there's always somebody that's willing to take
It's from space. It's aliens. It's got to be.
Came in a flying plate, and these guys crawled out and then became squid.
That's why them octopi are so smart and can open jars and shit, because they're really aliens.
Calamari invade us. Actually,
can we get calamari after this today?
Yeah, sure. When I look at one of these, I just think of Tulu. Cthulhu, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I just like to, any Lovecraft, like, weird, evil name, I always like to pronounce it like I have a date stuck in my throat. You know? Cthulhu. So what do you think of that one, then?
I think that's great. Hold on, let me...
You kind of knew that, right? Or
So that one, with the cephalopod, that one wasn't as big of a one for me. Just because I kind of knew some of that before, like with pod, I knew that one. So cephalo was kind of a new one, or kephile, or however it was pronounced in Greek.
I'll tell you. Okay, here I'll tell you now. Sorry,
Right.
This one comes. One of my best friend's mother is Greek.
Okay.
She actually passed away recently.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Here's a Fifi. And she used to have this really, really funny remark when we were teenagers.
Okay.
Where she would tell us that we were thinking a lot with a microcephalus when we should be thinking with a macrocephalus. If you catch my drift.
Oh, I caught it.
So she'd be like, and she was really funny talking. Like, I remember her with, she was just such a sweetheart. And she'd be like, you're all thinking with a macrocephalus, and you should be thinking with a macrocephalus at your age, And we'd all be like, yeah.
Was it extra word on the phallus part for the micro?
Actually, no, it wasn't. That I never made that connection. See,
Yeah.
Because you know what, we should research the etymology of phallus at one point, because I'm sure that it's somehow related. And she, being Greek, doesn't even see it because I bet you anything.
It's just the word.
Oh, you know what? So here's case in point in etymology. Without knowing it, I'm going to make an educated guess.
All right, here we go. On the spot etymology breakdown.
Phallus means appendix.
Oh, think so?
Yep. And cephalus is probably the cap appendix or something like that. Something along those lines. The top appendix or the capital appendix or something like that. That's cephalus.
All right. We're just going to leave it there.
And phallus is just like the thing that sticks out,
All right, so let's move into the next one here. This next one is for geocentric. Now, so with geocentric, this one, your illustration here is a little interesting, and I think it's a perfect one for this one. So the whole, two parts of this one is from ancient Greek geo, which means earth, and then kentrikos?
Yeah, I would say, yeah.
Kentrikos?
Yeah.
Okay. Over a center. So it looks like it's a representation of the solar system, except it's with Earth in the center as opposed to the sun.
This is actually inspired in an illustration from pre-Renaissance.
Okay.
That I found amazingly beautiful. So this is actually a recreation of that in the style of Etymology Quickies.
Right.
So this graphic representation of the universe exists. It's actually the old, before we realized that
the old thought process.
Before Galileo stated actually that the Earth moved.
Right.
He's said to say, and yet it moves. While he was being forced to say, no, it doesn't, because it was anti-religious, it was blasphemous. So until Galileo discovered or formulated the theory that the Earth actually moves around the sun and not the other way around, everybody thought that the asteroids moved around the Earth.
Right.
So that's what that is, a geocentric universe hypothesis. Concept,
yeah.
Be the word.
And to be fair to everyone back then, I mean, if all you ever knew was the solid ground that you were on from day to day, and you're just watching these things go in the sky, I could definitely see how people thought that, this is the center and everything just goes around it because they're not feeling movement, even though there is.
Right.
Because of gravity and all that stuff.
Right. And then, And then they start realizing that the astros are moving with the astronomers but still they don't have any reference to know that we're moving too.
Exactly.
So, so that took a while to figure out,
So a couple of examples here that you have for geo would be like geology, which is the knowledge of the earth. And I love this little illustration of this guy who's picking up a rock. He's like, the fuck is this? Is this a potato or a rock? I don't know.
He's a geologist. He's like, hey, here's a rock. It's different from the other rock. Wow.
I hope it's a geode.
That one went right over my head.
So geode, it's a type of rock that when you crack it open, it's full of crystals on the inside.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I think some people also call them, what is the, agates, I think, is another word for them or something like that.
In Spanish, agata. Yeah, I know that word. But
yeah.
I know that. Which one did you say?
So geode is what I called them as a kid. Where it's just like a little round rock, and when you crack them open, they're full of crystals. Typically, they're like volcanic material that just sort of like forms, and it's like an air pocket in the inside that has the minerals that then form into crystals over a long period of time.
Right. But the crust is just
yeah, it's just like a rock on the outside, and so it's when you crack it open, you're like, ooh.
But the crystals are rocks too. That's kind of why I'm
okay, so my meaning is that it looks like a boring ass rock on the outside,
and then you open it up,
and then it's like, oh, it's so beautiful.
It's all like Star Trek.
Yeah, exactly. Another one would be geography, which is the representation of Earth.
And then you have graphy, from graphic design, telegram and telegraph, and there are very, very slight differences,
Right.
So telegraph would be graphically send graphics across.
Right.
Across distance. And telegram, it's kind of actually they're synonymous. Telegram
really?
is
well, when I think telegram, I think of this may sound really dumb, but when I think telegram, I think of like an actual like paper that gets handed to somebody.
No, you're actually dead on. Okay. So the telegram is a message. The telegraph is the technology that makes that message get across.
Oh, so the telegraph sends the telegram.
Right. And here's where my etymology is failing, because at this point, we just hit the point where I can't tell the difference between graph and gram. And when we're done recording this, I'm going to go look it up. But there is a slight difference. Just like with geology is the knowledge and geography is the representation.
Right.
I think gram and graph have a completely different,
Okay.
Very slightly different, because both of them are representations, but one might be just visual and the other one is, I don't know. So a code of, maybe the word is code actually.
Ooh, that's a good, maybe it is.
Yeah. But you got photogram versus photograph. You got the same thing.
Yep.
So.
Well, and then, so there's a lot of different ways that we could look at that one too.
Yeah. So we will get back to you on that.
Graph versus gram.
Mm-hmm. We should do one of that.
So the second half of this one for geocentric is the centric part of it. And I like that one of your first example for that one to be like, here's another way that you can use it is actually heliocentric, which is centered on the sun, which is what we actually are. So I like that showing like, oh, this is the old thinking and this is what it actually is, sort of.
Actually, I don't think here. No, you're right, but there's one little slight difference there. Our solar system is heliocentric.
Right.
But our universe is not. And
that's also
heliocentric. Back in the day, we thought that the universe also involved our solar system. So here's a repetitive...
Before we got the concept of galaxies within a larger universe sort of thing.
Yeah. So the recurring theme here is that the more you know, the more aware you are of what ignorant you are. So when we started out, it was like, everything evolves around us. And as we know more, we're like, in fact... nothing, really.
Literally nothing.
So we're probably revolving around what, so.
Right. And it's just our solar system. It's not even the galaxy, because the galaxy is actually all around a black hole in the center of it, which is pulling everything in.
Well, and this is the thing. Do we really know that there's a center of the galaxy? Or is that in the
center of the universe or center of the galaxy? Because we know there's a center of a galaxy.
Oh, there you go. Right. So now I'm assuming that the galaxy is the universe, and we realize we're in one of many myriads of galaxies.
Oh, my God.
Right.
There's a trillion other galaxies out there.
And that's where I get lost. Like, how do we know? I got to brush up on this a little bit, because obviously this isn't my field of expertise.
Don't go too far down the rabbit hole. Otherwise, you start to feel like you it doesn't even matter anything that you do in life because you're such an infinitesimal speck on the rest of everything else.
I already kind of feel that way.
I know. It's just every time I'm like going off and doing research on it, I just get this overwhelming feeling of like, oh, I'm so small in this universe of things.
But yeah, I think I'm not going to keep going because we're going to end up philosophizing, and that's another episode.
Right.
But that was a really good point.
And so the second part of this one for centric would be centrifugal. So it's like centrifugal force, right?
Right.
Yeah. So escaping from the center. So it's like the example you're showing here is that if you're swinging like a bucket of water around, it's going to use the force of that or to keep the water in the bucket.
The water tries to escape the center of the force. That's why it's centrifugal.
Right.
And remember, fugal is, as in fugitive, means to escape.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
so
that makes
everything,
sense.
as you can. So the whole point of etymology is that you don't have to memorize a ton of words to be able to deduce or infer what a word that you've never heard of actually means.
Right.
So that's the whole point of that. So
right. So in the last piece of this here is just going over again, geocentric, if it was going to be directly translated, is something you covered off earlier, which is literally just centered on the Earth.
So, yeah, and in the graphic here, what I'm explaining is the orbit of the moon is actually geocentric.
Right.
So just like the geocentric vision of the universe was incorrect, it is correct to describe the moon as having a geocentric orbit because it does, in fact, orbit around the Earth.
Right.
Until we hear otherwise.
I don't know. I'm still on board for the spaceship theory.
Yeah, I still think everything evolves around the Earth.
All right, so this next one is something that's very kind of near and dear to both of us, simply because we happen to be in the spot for this one. So it's Minneapolis. So this one is a little different. So instead of like totally ancient Greek, this one also has some Dakota stuff, right?
Yeah, I really like this one because this one's a mixture of two languages. I find few of these.
Right. Typically, we're looking at ancient Greek. This one actually has
ancient Greek / Latin is what we've done so far, but yeah.
So it's Mini, which is just M-N-I for water.
Mini, I would say mini.
Mini.
And it turns into mini over time with, like tomato.
What we were talking about earlier, yeah.
Yeah.
And then polis, which is city.
As a metropolis.
Yeah.
Oh, polis is a city. Yep.
Which Superman has to protect. Metropolis.
Is Metropolis one?
That's the city that Superman lives in.
I'm just thinking of the Fritz Lang classic.
Oh, yeah. No, I think that's really interesting that like Minneapolis is literally when you think about it, it's the water city because of the way that it's done here. And I just think that's really cool because, I mean, this is the favorite line of, Minnesota's the land of 10,000 lakes. So
we have it on the license plate in the...
That's true.
Back of the bumper car, man.
The bumper cars?
You don't remember Up in Smoke?
Your license. Where's your license?
It's on the bumper, man, back there, man.
No, I mean your
license. So in the license plate in Minnesota, the reason we're making this crack is that has
it's front and back, but in like the western states, it's just in the back, right?
Okay, yeah. And it just says land of 10,000 lakes on every
on all of
the
our
generic license plate in Minnesota. That's what it says.
Yeah. So what's really interesting about this is that you talk about Minneapolis being the city of water, but when we talk about the name of the state, Minnesota, it's cloudy, clear water?
Yeah. So
is that the soda part that is like the cloudy part of it?
I think soda must mean, from the different sources that I read, that's what I got. Most sources say cloudy water.
Okay.
But many sources say cloudy or clear water. And they explain what I have in this illustration that a Native American explained to these pioneers, these Western colonists.
Yeah.
He demonstrated by pouring milk on water. And he said, Minnesota, or whatever, however you pronounce it. And what my guess with all of that is that Minnesota means the cloudiness of water.
Okay.
So whether it's cloudy or clear, it's
right.
It just means the clarity of water or the cloudiness of water.
Okay.
So
no, that makes a lot of sense.
And that's where that illustration comes from. That because the Native American demonstrated the water by pouring milk in a little stream.
I like that.
And clouding the water. So.
And then the next one down from that is Minnehaha, which I always thought was like When I first moved here, I thought it was like a joke.
Does it?
Because it just sounds like laughing. Haha.
Well, isn't there like I've always thought it was so funny because there's like I think it's in 94 in Highway 94. There's an exit that's Cretan Avenue, Minnehaha.
Yeah,
it's like where all the Cretans are. Haha. I don't know. It's just I always thought it was really stupid.
No,
and I know that's an asinine interpretation, but I always thought it funny.
Yeah,
and yeah.
So it seems like from your research, haha actually means fall. So it's just waterfall. It's a literal waterfall.
Right. And
maybe it doesn't
mean fall. It means cascade or whatever. Because remember, like a waterfall in Spanish, for example, is a cascade of water.
That's true. Yeah.
Fall. So who knows what haha really means? But we know that Minnehaha is a waterfall.
Yeah.
Whether they use the word fall to express that we don't know. But we do know it's a waterfall.
Yeah.
And the actual Minnehaha Falls, right?
Yeah, Minnehaha Falls.
That just means the waterfalls.
The waterfall falls.
The waterfall falls.
And then for polis, you have Constantinopolis. Well, I know it as Constantinople,
right.
Not Constantinopolis.
Well, it was Constantinopolis, but somebody did the tomato thing, and it turned into Constantinople.
Oh, really?
That's why it's there in parentheses, yeah.
Constantinople.
So if I would have just put Constantinople, people wouldn't have gotten that clear. So right,
because it doesn't have the polis part of it.
Right. It just means the city of Constantine.
Yeah.
The emperor, the first emperor to make the Roman Empire Christian.
Right.
He was like, hey, it's good for
not business. Like Constantine the witch hunter is a whole different Constantine.
I never even heard of that dude.
What?
Yeah. What is that? That's from some kind of saga or something.
No. It's like I don't know if it came from a comic book or where it came from originally, but Constantine is he's almost a riff off of Van Helsing, but for like angels and demons focused,
right, yeah.
As opposed to like witches and werewolves and all that stuff. But he's more like an angels and demons thing. There's actually Keanu Reeves movie where it stars Keanu Reeves and he is Constantine.
Okay, I think I heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's there's a whole other comic series related to like DC Comics and stuff like that.
But Constantine is, also the guy with the bull neck. He's quite the fighter. He's he's the first emperor to consolidate the empire under Christendom. Yeah. So he is the heir of one of the emperors that was sending all the Christians to the lions, and then he came and said, "Dude, this is bad for business." Like one religion based on one God, that really makes things a lot simpler. So
right,
and then he turned. I think it was him. Diocletian, was it that? I think under his rule, the empire became and Constantinople, which later became Istanbul, which was Byzantium. Istanbul. Eventually turns into the capital of the Roman Empire and the capital of the Byzantine Empire for almost a millennium after that.
Which is crazy to think about. But yeah.
We can talk about that some other time because that's a huge story.
What I want to talk about, though, are cosmopolitans.
Here we're in Cosmos again.
Yeah, so the polis in this one being a little different and being cosmopolitan. So the poly in that one being Universal City Slicker, which seems weird for the name of a really popular drink. Popular cocktail.
I went a little bit free. I did a little bit of a free form here. I can't find the expression.
Does your illustration gal only have a singular eye?
No, it's just the other eye is covered under her hair.
Okay.
What do you call
just like the bangs or whatever?
Yeah, the bangs are covering one of her hair.
Okay.
I actually, now that you're saying that, I prefer to say that she just has one eye. She's
it could almost be read like a cyclops.
She's a cyclops alien.
Well, she's having a universal beverage here,
right? And remember, everything comes from a flying saucer from elsewhere. Here's why I totally freeballed this one. So cosmopolitan, I called it Universal City Slicker. I thought it was a free translation that explained it better. But cosmopolitan, what it really means is the city of the universe, the universal city.
Got it.
And it comes to refer to a person that is a citizen of the world, actually.
Right.
And if you think of the word citizen, it comes from city too. So a cosmopolitan is really a citizen of the world, of the universe, and somebody that doesn't have a hometown because they feel that they are so well versed in the ways of the world. They're so well traveled. They have a vast culture that transcends locality, so to speak. You know?
Could that also just be interpreted as humans would be cosmopolitans of Earth?
Yeah, if you want to stretch it that way. But my point is the word cosmopolitan tends to be a more snotty. It has a more snotty meaning. It's more about somebody who's worldly, a sophisto. It's really a sophistic term for sophisto.
We could bring it back, you know.
So that's why
give it a new meaning.
But but first let's talk about the original,
the actual meaning. Yeah.
So I'm trying to tie it to the whole. You're asking me about the cocktail. The cocktail is named after this whole pseudo sophisto thing,
right?
Pinky sticking out, you know.
Yeah.
So cosmopolitan, like, I want to have a Cosmo. It's kind of a pretentious little cocktail. It's just, if you think about it, you know, there's marketing a cocktail has to do with a lot of pretentiousness. Case in point, the Moscow Mule, which no one knew what the fuck that was, like several years ago, and some genius, I think it was in Boston, came up with it. And this comes up with a little kettle prop. And a leaf sticking out. Now everybody's in love with that shit. They showed it in a couple of TV shows, and now everybody's like, I'll have a mule.
Yeah,
that's my favorite drink because it looks cool. It really doesn't taste all that, different from a mojito with vodka. It's really what it fucking is.
That's true.
So same with cosmopolitan. It's a Cosmo. It tastes better because the sound of the name is
fancier.
It's so exactly. I was waiting for you to do the voice. I was wondering when you were going to get to it. It just sounds,
Yes, it's all about doing the voice, and you get really nasally, and you're talking about my cosmopolitan.
There you go. That's exactly what that is.
Yes, you just need to sound really pretentious and like you really don't care about anyone else.
We're just better than you.
Get bent, motherfucker.
All right, so there, cosmopolitan, you nailed it.
Right, and then bringing it all back around to Minneapolis, which again is Water City, and then we have this nice image of the skyline here. It's a great little send off for that one.
My attempt at Lake Calhoun.
Well, it's not Lake Calhoun anymore.
Oh, that's right. I don't even know how to. Speaking of language, yeah.
So because of, and this is a slight tangent here, but because of Calhoun and who he is known, how he is known here, the actions that he's done, it's actually been renamed to be more appropriately Native American focused. But I can never remember
what's
what
really
the actual name of the lake is now.
You know what's messed up? Like last weekend was the last good weather weekend we had, so I went for a walk in this very lake, and now it has Native American names engraved on the sidewalk.
Oh, really?
Of like Tatanka, the bison, all these.
Yeah.
And I took pictures of them for the podcast. I was like, I better take pictures of this because I bet you there will be an opportunity. So we're going to put them right here.
Hey!
But guess what I didn't take a picture of? The name of the fucking lake. So I got some pictures.
That's all right. Luckily, Google Maps has it, and it's sitting right there. The actual name of the lake now, it looks like, is, we just pulled it up just so we had a reference, is Bide Makaska, I think it is.
That would be my guess. I would do the a lot, because usually when you have two consonants, it's really one sound. So it's like de Makaska.
You know what that reminds me of, though? No. It actually reminds me of the old Bugs Bunny and like Porky Pig stuff.
Yeah.
Where it's like, blah, 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 blah. That's all, folks.
Yeah. I look forward to the comments section on this one.
not to like insinuate anything. That's just what that saying it that quickly reminded me of. But yeah, so it looks like Bide Makaska.
Yep, I would say that's what it sounds like.
But yeah, so no longer like Calhoun.
Cool, good correction.
The next one we're going to talk about here is carnivore. So from Latin carnis or flesh to vore or devour. Vorare, sorry.
Vorare, remember Dino? Whoa.
I don't actually know.
Volare?
No.
To Fly, that song from Dean Martin. It's not a Dean Martin song, it's actually an Italian classic. Volare. Then the Gypsy Kings did Vorare. Yeah, that's your pronunciation.
Vorare. Okay. So carnis is actually carnis being of the flesh, I think it is.
Mm-hmm. Carne is flesh.
Oh, so like carne asada would be like flesh. What is asada?
Roasted flesh.
Roasted flesh. Carne asada.
Literally.
I do love me some carne asada tacos.
Mm-hmm. And carnitas.
Oh, yeah.
They're little meats.
Pork carnitas.
Yeah, it's just little meats.
So the first example you have here for carne is Carnival, which is a festival of the flesh. And this is quite the illustration that you have going for this one.
It's quite literal, I mean, if you think about like the carnival in Rio.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a ton of like fleshy exposure, and it's really what a carnival really is that. And I actually recall a story. So, if you think of Mardi Gras,
yeah, that's the example I was just thinking of too. Is Mardi Gras considered a carnival?
Totally.
Because that, I mean, if anyone's ever been to Mardi Gras, you know what's up.
In Spanish, it's called a carnival.
Okay.
So anything that has costumes in it originates in
costume and lack of clothes.
In general, yeah, but lack of clothes, they're skimpy costumes though.
Yes.
Like everybody's wearing costumes, but they're kind of skimpy and sexy. And that's also why I think that's why in Halloween there's like this tradition in the States and no one knows where it comes from, having the sexy, ridiculous outfits. I actually know. I had a friend who has a hilarious blog. I can't remember the title.
Okay.
Where she has like the stupidest sexy outfits, like sexy jalapeno, and she finds them online and then she just ridicules them on her blog, and they're just hilarious.
Hey man, I'm a sexy jalapeno.
But a carnival is just really a festival of the flesh. So Fasching in Germany, here's a story that's true also. Like in Fasching in Germany, which is the carnival they have in Germany, it's more known as a kind of Halloween because all the kids get up in costume and stuff.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But back when adultery was a crime still, we're talking about like I think the 50s, 60s, and 1950s, 1960s, it was still a penalized crime. It was legal during Carnival.
Oh, so it was like
cheat on your husband, yeah. And I see
special time period sort of thing,
right? And I've seen the same thing in that series Treme about New Orleans.
Oh yeah,
by David Simmons, I think it is, and all the guys that used to do The Wire. It's a fantastic series.
Yeah,
where they have this thing they call, and this exists in New Orleans, the Mardi Gras hookup. So
well, it's like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas kind of thing.
Yeah. I found out you cheated on me, but it was a Mardi Gras hookup, so okay, you get a pass kind of thing. Seriously, they talk about it in that context, and I'm sure it's a thing, just like the German thing is a thing too.
Right.
And if you just see images of the real carnival and you don't think there's people hooking up, you're very naive. Because that's what they're doing. So that's the word literally means that, and in fact in Spain, Mardi Gras, the Rio Carnival, and Fasching in Germany are all known as carnivals.
Okay, so it's just like a general term to represent all, because that's what it is.
Exactly. So an example would be, if you're in Spain and say, like, what is Fasching? I would say, it's a German carnival.
Got it. Okay.
And people are like, oh, okay, I get it,
Right. So
that's where that comes from.
So, and then a different way to use carne as well would be like reincarnate. Mm-hmm. So that's to acquire another flesh. So that's, I think reincarnate, I guess it's not in zombies. Zombies would be a bad example because that's like the risen dead. It's not getting a new body.
Zombie, it's like the old carnation that where you've already left that flesh and they're just
right. Whereas reincarnate is to get a new body, essentially,
to go into another flesh. A reincarnation, is to acquire another flesh. Exactly. So
So like the there's actually the belief in reincarnation in certain religions.
Yeah, it's like you reincarnate as a different type of animal or a plant, or
even sometimes just as a different person, depending on your belief system. But
right. But you acquire the point is you acquire a different body,
right?
A different vehicle of your soul.
Exactly.
So that's what that means.
So then we have vore or vor. So we have one example here of herbivore, which is a herb eater or an herb eater, depending on what kind of English you want to talk about. But they pronounce the H or not. So this would be like also considered like a plant eater, right?
A grass eater.
Yeah.
Herbivore means grass in certain languages. So
really?
A grass eater, yeah.
Okay.
Or I should say more correctly, a grass is an herb.
Okay.
In Spanish, it's just yerba, which is the same exact roots. That's why it's easier for me to make the relationship.
It's what again?
Yerba.
Yerba?
H-I-E-R-B-A. So it's like herb with an I inside.
Except the H is silent.
That's right.
I'm learning.
Yeah. Perfect. And so, like, for example, if you think of omnivore, that's somebody. Could you guess what that means?
I know what that one means, but an omnivore means omni. So it's like omnidirectional. So it's everything.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah,
omni-channel.
When I think of omni, I think of that. So it just means that you're going to eat plants, you're going to eat meat, you're going to eat everything.
So humans in general are omnivore, for example.
And then carnivore would be of the flesh.
Yeah, you eat flesh.
Yeah.
That's really what. Yeah. So yeah, but the reason I'm bringing that up is because herbivore and carnivore are so interesting.
Exactly.
Omnivore just makes sense too.
And then there's voracious, which is ravenous and then insatiably hungry. So it's just a lot of eating, and I would almost say that people that are voracious is another way of thinking of flesh eater as well.
Yeah, well, but it depends. Like you could be voracious about other stuff. So,
that's true. So I mean,
so I've heard it about like sex addicts, for example.
Or it could even be somebody who's a voracious drinker, in reference to like alcoholism, or just somebody who just drinks a lot,
or somebody that's like really avid of learning.
Right, so they're a voracious learner.
Appetite for knowledge.
Exactly.
Just read. That I've heard that too. So yeah.
Right. And so what it all comes down to is carnivore literally being flesh eater.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what is this? This illustration you have here is very accurate.
Are you saying it's anatomically correct?
Yes, I am. He went the extra mile to add the details so that there is no question as to what is happening.
In fact, I didn't go the extra mile at all. I took a photograph of a lion that was anatomically correct.
And just copied it.
And I decided I wasn't going to omit a thing because why?
Well, I mean, National Geographic doesn't do it. Why should you?
Exactly. So why would I add that edit to it that need not be there?
Exactly.
So that's what I did.
So I actually didn't even know that I had set us up like this, talking about somebody who is a voracious drinker, but alcohol being the next one on the list here. So and this one is Arabic.
Yeah, I wanted to do something. As you can see, I'm trying to snap out of ancient Greek / Latin because there's so many of those, and I wanted to make an extra effort of something that would be
something a little different.
And a lot harder to research. So if you look at this image at the bottom, you don't have to do it now, but if you look at the bottom, there's a huge footnote. You probably noticed it because you know it. You've seen it.
Exactly.
But there's a huge footnote with all the different sources, disclaimer, because there's a bunch of contested stuff in here. So so I had to explain, I had to justify why I had made certain choices, even when some of these are contested. So if you're interested, go read it. It's
definitely I would encourage it. Again, if you want to follow along with us and you've been wondering what we've been looking at this whole time, if you go to the description of the podcast or down in the description of the video on YouTube, we'll have a link there for you to go check it out. So with this one, alcohol, al being the, and kahul, which I'm trying to read this here, sublimed essence, or from kahala, to stain or paint?
Yeah, I would not pronounce any of those differently than what you did.
Okay.
So cool, maybe cool is more like that instead of cool, just because you'll see it in a second because of its relationship to coal.
Right.
But I mean, I've never heard those words pronounced out loud, so my guess is as good as yours.
I know. If anyone actually speaks Arabic and wants to correct me, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, correct us. Please do.
So the first one, al, your first example here of your little drawings are algebra, and it says the fix or the joint. And algebra being like the mathematic equation formulas.
Yeah. And in fact, in the illustration, and now I don't remember exactly how it went, but I would love to look at those again because those are fascinating. It's the Sumerians figuring out algebra, and what I never knew. So I learned algebra probably like you did as just numbers and with variables and and equations. And I didn't realize that those come from making a puzzle of the missing parts of this tells you how to calculate the part that's missing here. So that's the drawing. So it's a geometric thing. And
you're saying this is coming from the Sumerians?
It's pre-Sumerian too, but
I was about to say, who gave it to the Sumerians, right?
Right, yeah.
Aliens.
Well, I think it was the Indians, but who knows? Maybe the Indians came in a flying saucer too.
Well, I mean, there's Indian lore about that as well, but that's, again, there's part two of that.
I'm now getting very, very close to being convinced that everything can be traced back to aliens coming in some kind of flying saucer. The minute you run out of answers, you're like, and it came from space.
Look at this painting. The weird thing in there. Space. Spaceship.
Space. So, yeah, but that's a Sumerian scribe, actually, doing algebra. And it was first applied, I think, to agriculture, like just to calculate quantities.
Yeah.
And to be able to, so there's like the unknown part of this comes from, and that was the fix. again, I don't want to get into too much detail, but when I researched that graphic that I have there, that graphic it just told me what algebra really is, and I was like, it just a veil came off of my eyes. I was like, wow, and now I forgot. So
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that is the fix, algebra.
And then the next one we have is albatross, much different, which is the diver, which is, so this one here, you actually have the albatross bird.
Yes.
Which is just like a big giant seabird for anyone that doesn't know what that is.
Yep.
They're enormous. And this like dives underwater to catch fish. So hence the diver.
That is, yeah. And then it has al that comes from Arabic. Al just means the something.
The something.
So, yeah. Alhambra.
Which is the
fortress, I think it's called.
The fortress or the city?
The fort. I think it's a fort. It might be the city because it's a city.
Yeah.
But it started as a fortification.
Okay. Yeah.
So I believe that's what it means, but yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And then we have the other part of it, which is cool.
Cool.
Or coal.
I don't know how to pronounce that.
Well, the way it's spelled here is Kohl.
Yep.
And it's the essence of anonymity.
Antimony.
Antimony, sorry. So the way it's spelled here is Kohl, and it means the essence of antimony / sooty face paint.
Yes. So hold on a second, because it could be antimony.
Antimony.
Or antimony. I don't know. I'm guessing here.
When I hear antimony, it makes me think of alimony.
Yeah, me too. Because it sounds very. And maybe I'm pronouncing it after that, and it's antimony. I don't know. What I do know is that Kohl is this mascara, is this original mascara that they use in India. So when you see like
was it literally coal though?
Well, that's what they say is it came from soot. So
yeah.
One theory, and again, it's
like
footnote.
Ashes and everything.
Right. So what they say is the beginning of that was people taking soot and putting it in their eyes, and that's why coal. Coal comes from the same word, also contested. Okay. There's some people that say coal comes from this very same root.
Okay.
Antimony or antimony, I don't know how you say it, is in fact that mascara that they use today in India and in Indian countries, and that some people say comes from soot. So that's kind of why I have somebody from ancient Egypt,
right, like doing the lines and everything,
the original makeup, like exactly 5,000 years ago.
And then the one below that is coal, but it's spelled Coal, which is what we have all come to know, and it's just essential matter, and it's like
sooty. So where I'm struggling here on this one is between essence and soot. And
right.
Whether those are related in those like very, very archaic languages that get lost in time.
Yeah,
we don't know that much about. So that's kind of where I'm kind of bridging the gap a little bit with other theories that I read about.
Right.
So that's why coal is that in its essence, and it's also sooty.
Which is why alcohol is the essence or the spirit.
Right. So that's what alcohol is. And that's why, alchemy.
Is that why? Well, sorry, but is that why, like, some alcohol is called spirits?
I have the feeling it is. And again, that's why I have that huge footer that we're not going to get into.
Yeah.
But that's what I bumped into a lot of that, and I thought that was, and I kind of did what you did with ancient astronauts. I got myself. I kind of did what you did there, which is like, I'm going to choose to like this version better.
Right, exactly.
It aligns with. But
I acknowledge in my head that this may or may not be true, but it's what I'm going to choose to want to believe, essentially.
Right, exactly. So I just made that call, and now it's alcohol.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Comprendus. Oh, here's another one where I'm like trying not to do Latin and Greek.
So this next one is earthenware. So where is this from? Proto-Germanic. Okay, so erda or arde.
Yeah.
So earth or ground, and then ware or war for goods.
Yeah, and if you see like the ones that have like long A's, that's where kind of Dutch eventually evolves from. So Proto-Germanic is pre-Germanic.
Yeah.
So it's the precursor of Germanic, what we know as Germanic languages today, and both German and Dutch come from them.
Okay.
So I believe it's a tomato thing again. It's like depending on how it sounds in different parts of or different Germanic tribes, it gets spelled this or that way eventually.
Got it. Okay.
So
that makes sense.
So yeah.
So ard I love your first example here. For that one is aardvark, which means earth pork. Which I gotta admit, whenever I'm watching those Arthur cartoons as a kid, I was not thinking of a little earth pork chop walking around.
Oh, you see the top. Well, it looks like a pig, and it's digging in the ground all the time, so it makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense now. Like thinking about it, I was like, okay, that does make sense. But then it makes me think of like the Arthur the Aardvark cartoon series that I watched as a kid. Yeah. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I could eat Arthur.
Yeah, were those the ones that were it came with the Pink Panther series? Were those the same ones? And he had like the little mouth at the end of the.
No. It's like a very, very, very like stylized kids cartoon show that's more of like teaching lessons that you would get in school and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know those ones.
And then the next one we have is yard, which is ground enclosure, which I have to wonder if a yard is a ground enclosure, is the measurement of a yard would have been one measurement of that ground enclosure?
That's where we assume.
Like a yardstick?
That's where it's coming from, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so a yard is, a measure of this ard.
Oh, man. So if I had a front yard that was literally just a yardstick long and wide, it's like, all right, this is my literal front yard.
Well, it's like when you say any measurement unit, like if you say foot,
yeah, it's
what a foot measured. So a yard is like what a minimum measure of land.
Interesting. Okay.
I always kind of think of like y'all when I see this.
Yeah.
And I just imagine, Proto-Germanic people talking like, yard, your art is yonder, like yard is yard and mard is yard.
Oh, I see. I see what you mean now. Yeah.
See, like I just imagine those guys just talking like yard, mard. And it's probably that's probably not how it went down. But then again,
so you're saying that it might be so the yard could be like literally your ground. Essentially.
I'm making that. I'm totally pulling that out of my ass, but that's kind of what I see in my.
Well, right, like in your mind, like the word could have come from people just.
Where's my yard? It's yard. Did you measure? You measure yard already? It's 3 yards and 4 yards.
I like that.
So yeah, I'm totally pulling that out of my ass. So
and then where? So first example you have here is silverware. So it's silver goods, and I've noticed that. The drawing that you actually have here, they're not actually silverware. These would be like iron.
No, actually, they would be silverware. Because
would these still be silver?
And here's why. And it's kind of like what the background drawing is kind of implying. So this is what the barons have in the Middle Ages. So the barons are the rich people.
Right.
You bet they're made of silver.
Oh, okay. Because I'm used to seeing, like for the example you've shown or drawn here, this looks more of like what I would see the Vikings use.
Oh, I see. Because
it's like the two-prong fork.
The prong thing. Exactly. That's just because it was. I don't know if I researched some ancient silverware, and it looked like that.
I'm sure it did.
And but back then, like only rich people had silverware. Like you and I.
Oh yeah, we'd be using our hands or something.
Little knives, like little knives that you used to like knife people, and then cut the cheese that you ate. You just cut everything
for everything.
Yeah. You just used it for, and then you just wiped it like, and you were done. So yeah.
Okay, and then the second example you have here is warehouse, which is a house of goods, which makes a ton of sense since that's all you do is in a warehouse is store goods.
It's a word that hasn't changed at all.
Right. I mean, that's still
to this day.
To this day is exactly the same thing. So, yeah. Whereas, like, yard might be a little different now, but.
Yeah. I just love yard, though. Yard.
Or maybe it's pirates.
Yeah. Where's Mars? It's yard.
Yard. So altogether, earthenware would be goods made from the earth.
Yeah, and this is easier to explain, I think, in Spanish because we use
the pottery for some.
Right. So exactly. So what we use in Spain to say earth is the same word that we use for soil in ground and clay. So
which is
tierra.
Tierra?
Tierra, as in extraterrestrial, means outside of the earth.
Oh, okay.
There you go. Terraform. Tierra. Yeah. And again, I can't roll my R, so you could do
tierra.
Tierra. T-I-E. So you have to do that.
Tierra.
Tierra. There you go. And so goods made from the earth makes a lot more sense because you actually do see you modeling clay.
Right.
Because clay is soil in Spanish. But here, earth is more, at least from my understanding, earth is more of the planet. So goods made from the earth doesn't immediately conjure that image.
No, but yeah, I see what you mean with with the soil and the clay and all that stuff. Yeah.
But maybe it does. I mean, to me, when I say goods made from the earth, earthenware doesn't make that much more sense in English. But yeah.
Right. So the last one we're going to talk about today is disseminate. And I'm not going to screw it up by saying decimate again. But this one is from Latin again. So dis, wildly, and then in different directions. And then seminar, to plant seeds.
Mm-hmm. That pronounced that would be seminare.
Seminare.
But yeah.
But not like a seminar, which is just mine seeds.
Right. To sow. Actually, I think seminar is probably the same thing.
Right.
We'll get to it. Let's go through
yeah. So the first one you have for dis is disassemble. Now I noticed that this one you put a little precursor to that says to in parentheses. Mm-hmm. So to disassemble is to take apart.
Yeah, I just put the to because it's a verb. That's the only reason I put that. So it's the opposite of assembling. So you assemble, you put things together.
Right.
Disassemble is you take the assembly, you break the assembly, you kind of take it apart.
And the next one would be divulge or to divulge.
Mm-hmm.
So to spread among the common or the vulgar. Now, what do you mean by the vulgar in this instance?
Vulgo in Latin just means, to put it more, and use a derogatory term, just because I can't find a better one. It's like what they say in English, the great unwashed.
Okay.
So the vulgo is what like the rich people used to refer to the populace, To
anyone that was below a certain measure. Right. Yeah.
So it could translate in modern language as general population. So like everybody, the majority of everyone, because like that's who they were. Like the vulgo is everyone, except the privileged few, right?
Right.
So to divulge is to spread among,
everyone.
It's like don't keep the secret to the elite. Just like let it out there, so it spreads like wildfire, and everyone now knows.
Yeah.
So that's what divulging is, and that's what vulgo is. And then vulgar becomes a derogatory term later, because what common people say is usually not considered all that elegant. Does that make sense?
Curse words are considered vulgar.
Yeah, so things that people would do back in that age,
right?
That were uneducated, like scratching your crotch in front of everybody, that would be vulgar. So that's kind of where those things start. Right? Don't pick your nose, which I do all the time in this podcast. Don't do things that are not that elegant or that good.
Right?
That proper.
Right. So now the seminare side of things. So for the first one you have here is seminal, that which germinates. And I'm a big fan of this imagery here, going to go record shopping and everything.
Even if I drew the biggest vinyl albums to be in existence, those are definitely from space.
Right.
Because vinyl albums are not that big.
Right.
But I just kind of took some liberty of drawing it.
And I do like the fact that I'm seeing MC5 in here as well.
Kick out the jazz, motherfucker! Yeah!
Oh, yeah. So what this is showing is we're showing three seminal influences of punk rock. So seminal just means something that was a seed that germinated into something else.
Exactly.
So everybody agrees that Iggy Pop, the New York Dolls, and the MC5 are precursors of punk rock, and because they were also inspiration to create that genre that came later,
it's sort of what
they are seminal.
Right.
So the seminal albums of Iggy, MC5, and the New York Dolls gave us punk rock later. So that's kind of what that was. And those are supposed to be the Ramones, actually, listening to. Even though the Ramones and the New York Dolls are pretty much contemporary.
Yeah.
And they kind of pulled from one another, so to speak. So.
Right.
But yeah. So that's that.
The next one down we have is seamen. And no, I don't mean sailors. I mean seamen, or the seed.
That's literally what that means. And that's where the word seminary comes from, to sow the seed.
To sow the seed, literally.
So, yeah, it's literally that. So there's no more explanation.
So when it all comes together, disseminate or to disseminate is to spread the seed. And good gracious, we are spreading the seed with this illustration.
How do you mean?
Just because of the way that you have. So who is it you have depicted in here? Because what I see is it's Roman. It's a leader in front of an entire army who is trying to disseminate his message of how to have an opinion or something like that.
Well, yeah, you're pretty right on. That's what it is. So, if you recall, in the Roman Empire, the senators also took arms and led armies.
Right.
In times of war. So what I'm depicting here is a senator who's about to lead an army into war, into battle.
Got it.
And he's giving them a pep talk, which I believe isn't the verb to harangue or harangue the troops. Maybe I have that wrong. I'm not sure. We'll look it up. But it's like,
I think I've heard of harangue before, but that's not what I would have said.
When you give this big rally, to I
would have just said to gather the troops, I think.
No, but what is it like? So, for example, when a coach gets a football team in the dressing room right before they go out to play and gives them this big speech so that he motivates everybody.
Oh, the pep talk?
Is that the pep talk? Okay, so
to give them the pep talk or to rally the troops.
Rally the troops
would be another one to say.
Well, rally just means literally get them together.
It's to gather, yeah.
Then talk, or you give a talk. So I think the verb is haranguing. I will look into it.
Sure, yeah.
But I would have sworn that term exists, and it's just like what you do to just insufflate your troops with motivation.
Yeah,
get them like all which is generally just a brainwash exercise of sorts. But to disseminate is to spread the seed of an idea. So that's kind of what I'm trying to illustrate here. And because it's Latin, I'm just using Romans,
right?
Because it just works.
Well, that's actually all we have for these etymology quickies for today.
They weren't very quickie, but we went through
Okay, well, they're a lot quicker if you're just reading through them. I mean, obviously, it went a little longer for us because we're trying to sort of explain where it is coming from and then tie a little more context around all of that for the sake of the podcast. But no, these are actually, I think, really great little things to help kind of teach language and sort of teach origin of language.
Thank you.
In like a lot of different ways.
Well, my whole intention with this was to make, the reason I called them quickies is it was kind of a storytelling exercise for me too. It's like, how can I tell in 4 glances, how can I explain how to break down a word that you haven't heard before?
This entire history of this word.
Right.
How can I break it into 5 panels or whatever?
And at the same time explain etymology using these examples.
Now we have planted the seed, so to speak, into you as well. So if you're ever curious about the origin of a word, you kind of know how to break it down now, or at least where to start looking.
You have no excuse after this.
No, not at all. So again, thank you all so much for listening, for watching, for all of your feedback down below. We really appreciate it. And until next time,
stay out of prison
and walk in the shade.